In Ruiru's eastern bypass, we find our way to Greenview Estate, a place where Eunice Waweru has called home for many years. Eunice happens to be the only survivor in an accident that claimed 7 lives in Uganda, where she had been transferred to go and work by her employer.
Hello, my name is Eunice Waweru. I'm an HR practitioner. I work in the financial industry in Kenya. In 2011, my employer then sent me on a contract in Kampala. I was rolling out a project and I decided I wasn't going to go without my daughter. So I took my daughter and my house help with me. A friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, decided to come visit me and we were happy to have her. And as part of us getting to know the beautiful Uganda, a friend of ours who's Ugandan, but he'd stayed in Kenya for a while, in 2003, decided to extend a welcome just like we'd welcomed him when he was here. So he was going to take us to see their beautiful country. It was him and his wife and their 2 children. So on October 1st, 2011, we set off for Jinja from Kampala. We went through the normal route. I'm sure every Kenyan who's gone to Uganda has made those stops where you go by, enjoy that chicken that hangs on sticks. We had all that. And we went to Jinja. We went to the source of the Nile. We went, had lunch. And as we were having lunch, I remember my daughter behaving extraordinarily. She was too loud, too bossy, yet all the other children were just backing her. The last thing I remember about her was this beautiful dance she did around a little child that we'd found where we were having lunch, and all the other children started dancing around them. Well, now when I look back, I think that happened so that it will be the last beautiful memory I have of her. So we had lunch, it was about 4 o'clock, and we went to the Bujagali Falls. As we were going down the falls, my daughter said, "No, I'm a big girl, I will walk." She was 5 years old then. She was exactly 5 years and 1 month. "I'll walk down." So she walked down the steps. We watched the beautiful falls and we started our journey back to Kampala. It was now about 6 o'clock. My friend Dan was driving his van. They owned a school, so he was driving his van. I was seated next to him, so I was the co-driver of the vehicle. His wife was seated right behind him. My friend Josephine Nabuire was seated right in the middle. My house help Purity was seated now in the back row, and the children, that was my daughter Nyambura, Jonathan and Nicole, who were Dan's children, were seated at the back. So as we were going back, I remember even asking Dan, "Why are you driving so slowly?" You know, he would get onto the climbing lane, like the tracks, and let other vehicles go by. And I remember asking him, "Why are you just getting off?" And he said, "Let those who are in a hurry rush." And I remember us singing. We'd bought drums, little drums on the way back, so everybody was busy, happy singing. I was in such high spirits. I called my mother, I called my sister, I called my friend Doreen, I called my brother. And I was just so happy calling back home. Remember, we'd been away from home for a month. We were planning to come home in 2 weeks' time. And the last song I remember singing, my daughter was leading the song, and she actually wasn't very happy with me because she was saying, "Why am I on the phone? Why aren't I singing?" It was, you know, that song that children sing when you're happy and clap your hands. So everybody was singing, and the next thing I knew. I got up. It was all dark. I could just see flashes of light around me. I could tell next to me, I could see 2 children. I could tell they were dead, but at this point, I didn't even recognize them. They were my friend's 2 children. Now, when I look back, I realize I think the police were arranging bodies. So my body was first. Jonathan and Nicole were next to me, because when I sat up, I could see there was so much action around me. Then I saw police boots coming towards me. So the cops lifted me up, walked me to a police van, and as soon as I was seated in the police van, I looked across the road and I saw a vehicle, and I suddenly realized I was in that car. And it started coming back to me that I was with my daughter. So I got off the police vehicle, crossed the road, and I realized that the vehicle was in a ditch. So I jumped into the ditch. I saw my daughter lying in the water. My daughter loved to swim. She swam every day. Every time she got a moment to swim, she would. So just before I reached her, I had hands grab me and I was taken to an ambulance. And it was while I was being taken to hospital that I realized that must have been an accident. And I started praying that everybody was well. At that point, I didn't realize I had some deep cuts on my leg, deep cuts on my forehead. The doctor actually did a facelift on me. So on my way to hospital, I kept praying. It had rained. I was wet. I could now see, I was wearing white shorts. I could now see blood forming all over my shorts. And when I got to hospital, I got attended to. I had first aid and I was taken to a ward. By now, it was about 8 o'clock. So I realized I must have lost about half an hour of time. So when I was in hospital, a big group came towards me. And one of the people introduced themselves as Dan's brother. And he asked me what Dan was wearing. But then it hit me, if this person is Dan's brother, why would he be asking me? So, and I stopped describing and I asked him, why are you asking me? He said it's because Dan's body could not be identified. It was completely mangled. And it hit me, what? But I was seated next to Dan. So then he went on to ask me, what was Lillian wearing? And I asked him again, if Lillian is your sister-in-law, you definitely then know how she looks like. Why do I need to describe what she was wearing? And he went like, she's also unrecognizable. And I think that was when it started dawning on me how bad the accident had been. So I asked them at that point, so what hospital have the others been taken to? And it was at that moment that my life changed. For it was then that they informed me everybody died. I thought, what? So here we were when coming from Ginger, very excited about the day we'd had. It was a beautiful day. Yet Dan, his wife, their 2 children, Jonathan and Nicole, my daughter Nyambura, my friend Josephine, and Purity were all gone in a flash.
Friends are a treasure, and indeed, Eunice had one that she faithfully kept at heart.
My name is Doreen Kanywa. I have known Eunice Wawero for more than 10 years now. And her daughter Nyambura, her house help Purity, and even Josephine were also my friends. Eunice has been my colleague over those years in HR. And my children and Nyambura and Eunice, we have done a lot together. So on that Saturday night, when I got the call from Eunice's sister, and I was preparing to go to bed, and she said, do you have a pen? Write this number and call Eunice on the number. So I tried to ask Wangari, Eunice's sister, so why am I calling Eunice on this number? She says, no, she just called and said, call her back on this number. And therefore I ended the call with Wangari, and I called the number. Fortunately, it went through, and it was picked by a young sounding man. And I spoke with Eunice, and Eunice said, Doreen, we've had an accident. I'm in hospital, and I don't know where the others are. And I tried to calm her down. I said, it's okay, we'll find them. I'm sure they've gone to different hospitals. And when we disconnected the phone with Eunice, I later called, a short while after I called the number again. And I asked the young man, so where are the others? And that's when he told me Eunice was the only survivor in that accident. And I remember shouting and saying, so God, why did you let Eunice live? How do you think she's going to survive this? And someone I was with in the house asked me, listen to yourself, what are you saying? I said, but it's true, so how will Eunice ever live with this? She should just have gone with the others. Those were my words.
Of course, at that point, the first things that went through my mind was, how am I going to break the news to Purity's mom? Purity had worked for me for almost 4 years. She'd basically brought up Nyambura. She was my house help. What was I going to tell Josephine's parents? You remember Josephine had come to visit me the day before. How was I going to get their bodies home? I had so many questions running through my mind. I think at that point I hadn't even realized that it was all gone. So well, I figured I would have to contact somebody back home. And I couldn't tell my family because I didn't know what to tell them. So I tried calling my friend Doreen. So I stayed in hospital. The following morning, my colleagues came to see me. And of course, since I couldn't go identify the bodies, a friend of mine called Stella, who lived in Kampala then, had to go identify the bodies on my behalf.
I started to look for help. I called my then head of HR at that point, and I told him what had happened. He said he'll try and get help. So he called his counterpart in Uganda, and we kept in touch. We also kept in touch with now our other colleagues in Uganda, and we managed to sort of put together the arrangements to bring back Eunice to Nairobi for treatment, and also assist to bring the bodies home. So I went to Eunice's brother's house the next morning. He lived close by me, also to break the news to him. It wasn't easy, but I could tell he was already thinking ahead of me and making his conclusions. Managed to gather ourselves up. We went to Josephine's family house in Kimathi. We found their young sister. We couldn't tell her, and we tried to ask where the others were, and she told us they were in church. God gave us the wisdom and the grace, and I think what happens with bad news, they travel faster than even our thoughts, because even by the time we are telling them, they are already making their conclusions, so to some extent making our work easier. And we spent the whole of Sunday making plans now to bring Eunice home for treatment and also airlift the bodies so that the burden becomes lighter.
My name is David Waweru. I'm Eunice's brother. At the time of this accident, I used to live in Donholm, very close to where Doreen used to live. Like a week prior, I really got sick, and I'd go to hospital and get all manners of tests done, and nothing was showing up. So on that particular Sunday, Doreen called me at around 7 in the morning. She told me she was outside the place I used to live. And I was like, okay. I actually thought she had a fight at home, so maybe she'd come to look for her brother to like talk to something. She sat down, she was just shifting around on the seat, so I knew something was wrong. So she broke the news. I wasn't shocked. I don't know. I wasn't shocked, but I remember just going to the bathroom, just under the tap, washed my head, and I cleared up. Even my illnesses, everything just went. So I knew that I'd been feeling that, that intuition.
I found my friends and family waiting at the airport. I am grateful for my employer because they'd made all arrangements, and as soon as I landed, I was taken to Nairobi Hospital, and my friends and family, and as well as the insurance company that was handling our insurance then, they had a representative that stayed on until the bodies were cleared. I can tell it was a really difficult time, hearing your baby referred to as cargo, because that's what bodies are cleared as. Now, I'll just like to say that at that point I was already divorced, but I knew if my ex-husband asked to bury his daughter, I would have said yes. So he did, and I let him bury his daughter. She was buried in their family land.
I kept away from Eunice, and I think everybody thought I'm the most helpful person, but it was the way I dealt with grief myself, because I didn't know what to say to Eunice. So I kept to the details of the funeral, and I was very, very busy doing everything and picking everything from everybody so that I can avoid Eunice. I say, by God's grace, Eunice has been strong. She has her low moments, as she explained. Everything changed. We didn't know how I would come to this house again with my young boys also, and we didn't know what again to say to Eunice. But Eunice has made it easy. She speaks of Nyambura, and I mean, even when you go to her house, the portrait of Nyambura is so imposing that this is a subject that she wants going around. Once a mother, always a mother. She will always be Mama Nyambura. Eunice has changed since the loss of Nyambura. Her life revolved around Nyambura. Her weekends were dedicated to Nyambura and activities for her. And without that, then it's, I don't want to use the word empty, but I can't find a word to replace that. That I have so much time that I had dedicated to do things with my daughter in her absence. And I said, Eunice is a people person. We invite her to birthdays, and she comes, and when she's walking, you probably are seeing the emptiness. She would walk with Nyambura in tow, but now she's alone. But one of the things I think Eunice has endeared herself to people, even to children. So it's not easy. You would have to know her a bit more to be able to see that void.
What have I to say out of the whole ordeal? Life happens. As much as we might not want to look at it as it is, death is a part of life. My biggest takeaways were, I am grateful of the people that I lost in that accident. We hadn't spent so much time with Dan, but the little time we spent in the office was all a happy time. I was grateful to have met Dan's family. I was grateful to have been Nyambura's mom. If I were to live all over again, I would be her mother again. Josephine was one of my closest friends. To date, I still come across some jokes, and I know only she would understand those jokes, and she's not here to understand. I was grateful to have had purity in my life. What I would like to say to parents is, love your children. Be there for them when you can. Life is too short. We are just custodians of our children. We don't know how long we have them, but love them. I wouldn't say there's anything Nyambura would have wanted on earth that she didn't do. In fact, at some point, my brother remarked that Nyambura was only 5 years, but she lived a richer life than most people had. I totally agree. By the time Nyambura was 2 years old, I think she knew what she wanted. I remember we would dress her up and she would just go try and remove everything, and she would drag pink clothes back to us so that we could dress her in that. I remember we once took a trip and she was such a go-getter. She would ask for anything she wanted. So I would say, parents, just let your children be what you can grow them to be. Just give them a chance to be, because you don't know how long you're going to have them. For drivers on our roads, because the accident was caused by a driver who just didn't have their full attention on the road. I will say, for a driver, pay full attention on the road. If you feel distracted, if you're sleepy, if for some reason your mind isn't totally on the road, stop driving. Because in this very short time, you changed so many families' lives. Dan's family lost Daniel, his wife, and his 2 children. I lost the only child I had. Purity's family lost the only daughter they had. She was a breadwinner. Josephine's family lost their daughter. So drivers, I think it's very important, if for any reason you're distracted, just stop driving.
Nyambura's father was broken up, totally. I'm telling you, we'd normally meet, and I'd see his reactions and the way he was reacting and trying to cope with that particular issue, and he'd break up. You realize this was his daughter. He'd named her after his mother, so it was in Kikuyu culture that is normally very tight. So he was very emotional. He couldn't function. I remember people telling me that I needed to be there for him because he wasn't in a position even to actually go around his daily duties. He was in shock for a long time. After the funeral, the only thing he'd only speak about was his daughter. It's been 7 years. I met him last month. We actually bumped into each other on the anniversary of his daughter's death, and he was kind of broken up. That's the only thing he was talking about. He seems still shaken. I think he's coping well now, but I think there's a void. I can't speak with finality because I haven't lost a child, but I know when I look at him, and I know that there's an empty space. I also know my sister quite well. It was awkward. It was awkward, like for the first couple of years, because I didn't have the words to say to her, to try to console her. I'm normally still at a lot of words because I don't really know how to console people, but I'm there for them. But even today, I know she misses Nyambura. I miss her too. Actually, we were kind of tight. I remember I taught her how to wash her hands. You're supposed to wash your hands, and she was excited. And every time she'd come to my place, she'd tell me, "Come, let me show you how you showed me how to wash my hands." Those were such small things. I normally remember them. She was a sweet girl.
When I came back, I contacted my lawyer, and it was quite difficult actually getting to find out who the owner of the vehicle was, because that owner sold the vehicle off shortly after the accident. We tried getting more information from the Uganda police, but it looked like they released the vehicle at some point. And so my lawyer hired an investigator. They were able to track down the current owner of that vehicle. So there's a lawsuit pending. We haven't made much progress because, regrettably, Purity's dad, who was her next of kin, passed away last year. So again, the process had to begin of getting another next of kin now, who is her mother. So we are waiting for justice to be served. I wish the driver would be brought to book, but we haven't seen much progress yet. So we still await for our day in court. The accident changed my life. I had many dreams for my daughter. I dreamt, of course, I had plans of what I'll do at her 7th birthday. We were going to get her a new bedroom, her own bedroom. I had dreams, I had insurance, savings for her future education. I think what happens when you lose a child is you lose yourself. The world expects you to move on, but when you lose your child, you actually lose a part of you. So, thing is, and I would like to say this to everybody who tells people, move on, get away with it, it will be well. It won't be well. Your baby has gone. So that's exactly what happened to me. I had to find a new way of living without her. I told you Nyambura loved swimming. Sunday afternoons were dedicated for her swimming. It took me about a year to start finding a new normal. And I believe, from also speaking with other parents who've lost children, you have to start finding a new way of... Your normal is not a regular normal, because at times everything will be well, you're happy with people, and suddenly grief strikes. At times, I can tell you for sure, holidays, family holidays, Christmas, Easter is never the same again, because you watch everybody together with their family and you wish you would just take off and go away. I have learned through it all to totally just live. I live in the moment. Life happens, death happens. Before this accident, it actually hadn't hit me that children die. I know children die, but as long as we're alive, let us live now. We don't know how long we have. Things that you see other people taking for granted, you don't take for granted anymore. After the accident, I realized how important relationships were. For example, when I meet somebody today, if I'm meeting you today, I will keep away my phone. I will pay attention to the person I am with, because you don't know if you'll ever see them again. You don't have time to hold grudges. I thank God because He's held my hand through it all. At times, of course, it becomes very difficult. I can tell you, birthdays and the death anniversaries are the worst bit. But then I am reminded by many places I have read that grief is the price we pay for loving. So even as I grieve, I am glad to have loved. I am grateful I am alive. There are many things I plan to do in memory of Nyambura, and I pray I will be alive long enough to bring this to fruition. That's it.
As research tells us, individuals heal and bounce back faster if they can voice their feelings and feel the support of caring souls.